Irish poet Oscar Wilde once quipped, "A true friend stabs you in the front, not the back." In the world of professional wrestling, where larger-than-life characters clash in epic battles, one rivalry embodies this quote perhaps better than all others. A tale of friendship torn apart by ambition, of trust shattered by betrayal. A narrative that spans nearly a decade, bookended by triumph and heartbreak. Two women who revolutionized their sport, who broke barriers and set new standards. They climbed to the top together, only to find that there was only room for one at the summit. This feud is where hugs become slugs, where boss meets loss, and where the line between friend and foe disappears in the heat of battle. Sasha Banks and Bayley. Grab some water as we roll this one back with a rewind. Welcome to the Feed Rewind. I'm your host, Benza Lance. There's perhaps no better story that has captured the focus of the WWE's women's division more than the saga between the Boss and the Hugger. From the heights of NXT to the main stage of WWE, their story has captivated millions. It's a saga of triumph and heartbreak, of championships won and bonds broken. This week, we'll have to dig deep into the roots of their friendship, witness their rise to stardom, and unravel the events that turned these best friends into bitter enemies. So sit back, strap in, and let's journey through the highs and lows of the remarkable rivalry of Sasha Banks and Bayley. Our story begins in 2012, in the hallowed halls of WWE's developmental brand, NXT. This was the time of transformation for women's wrestling in WWE. Gone were the days of, quote, divas and bra and panty matches. NXT was nurturing a new breed of female performers, athletes who could captivate audiences with their in-ring skills rather than just their looks. Enter Bayley and Sasha Banks. These two young women, both in their early 20s, were part of a new wave of talent that would revolutionize women's wrestling. Bayley, the hugger, the internal optimist, the fan who lived her dream. Her character was an homage to the young girls who grew up idolizing wrestlers, a beacon of positivity in the often cynical world of professional wrestling. Earning her stripes through hometown promotion Big Time Wrestling, Bayley would start to gain notice when she was featured in Shimmer. Sasha Banks, on the other hand, was the boss. Confident, brash, and unapologetically ambitious. Banks exuded star power from the moment she stepped into the ring. While both of these athletes are West Coast, best coast by birth, Banks is most associated with Boston, where she would cut her teeth in chaotic wrestling and the NWA. Their paths first crossed in NXT, where they formed a friendship both on and off screen. They were part of a core group of women, alongside Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch, who would later be dubbed the Four Horsewomen of NXT, a nod to the legendary Four Horsemen stable. But as is often the case in professional wrestling, friendships can be fleeting when championships are on the line. These four women improved and gained popularity, and found themselves on a collision course for the NXT Women's Championship. It is almost impossible to talk about the separate Bayley and Sasha Banks story without talking about Charlotte and Becky as well. So, as a prelude of sorts to our main story, April 24th, 2014. The NXT Women's Championship is vacated by NXT General Manager JBL due to current champion Paige having been called up to the main roster. What would follow would be a single elimination tournament to determine a new champion. Planting very early seeds in our story, Banks would defeat Bayley in an early first-round match. Banks would lose to Natalya in the next round, who herself would lose to eventual champion Charlotte Flair at the NXT TakeOver event on May 24th, 2014. Charlotte is now the NXT Women's Champion. Over the following weeks, Bayley would defeat Sasha Banks to determine the number one contender. Bayley would get a shot at NXT TakeOver Fatal 4-Way on September 11th, 2014. But she would not only lose the match, but would get jumped by Sasha post-match before Charlotte would step in to stop the violence. A rematch for Bayley against Charlotte was booked for early October, which Bayley also lost. Becky Lynch would turn on Bayley in mid-October, aligning herself with Sasha. Most of the fall and winter months saw these two loosely based teams going back and forth. Sasha herself would receive a title shot against Charlotte on January 21st, 2015, but would lose this match when Becky would interfere by attacking Charlotte. While this beatdown is happening, Bayley, who had been gone for a few weeks due to a knee injury, returns to save Charlotte. Not. Remember when that was a thing? Yeah, Google it. Fuck, I'm old. Anyways, Bayley also turns, this time on Charlotte, and everyone just beats down on her. It's quite obvious that there's dissension all around, and whether you're a good girl or a bad bitch, everybody has their eyes on that championship. So, we settled this way God intended. In the ring, Fatal 4-Way style. And this is where we can slide into our main story. NXT TakeOver Rival took place February 11th, 2015. Of course, this event has even deeper lore in another feud we'll cover soon, in the Sami Zayn-Kevin Owens feud. Those cats were the main event. Go watch the show, as our penultimate match of the night is our Fatal 4-Way match for the NXT Women's Championship. In just over 12 minutes, Bayley, Becky, Sasha, and Charlotte put on a mat classic, as these women would come to be known to do. In the end, it would be Sasha pinning Bayley off of Charlotte before Sasha would hit a bank statement and a crucifix pin for the 1-2-3 victory. Charlotte's reign ends at an impressive 258 days. And the start of our feud, and Sasha's run as NXT Women's Champion that will do whatever it takes to win, begins. Over the spring and summer, Banks would defend her championship multiple times, including against Charlotte Flair twice. Sasha's next major roadblock would be her hugger friend, Bayley, who was coming out of a feud with Emma, where Emma was browbeating Bayley for being too nice and passive. While this wouldn't necessarily lead to a more vicious Bayley yet, one could definitely read the desperation and exasperation on her face as every match and promo went on. In August, after defeating Charlotte, Bayley defeated Becky Lynch to become the #1 contender for the NXT Women's Championship, setting her on a collision course with Sasha. Our next canonical event isn't just important for us in this episode, it's important for women's wrestling as a whole. NXT TakeOver Brooklyn on August 22nd, 2015. The Barclays Center is holding the Battle for Brooklyn on this night, and this match for the NXT Women's Championship was more than just a title bout. It was a statement to the wrestling world that women's wrestling could headline shows and deliver matches just as compelling as their male counterparts. The build-up to this match was intense. Sasha, the champion, had been dominant and dismissive of Bayley's chances. Bayley, the perpetual underdog, was determined to prove herself and win her first major title. The story was simple but effective. Could the nice girl finish first for once? The match itself was a masterpiece of in-ring storytelling. For 18 minutes, Banks and Bayley put on a clinic of technical wrestling, high-flying moves, and emotional storytelling. The match was a masterclass in in-ring psychology. Throughout the summer, Bayley had been nursing a hand injury. So, Sasha, the heel champion, targeted Bayley's hand throughout the match, a strategy that serves two purposes. First, it was a practical move to weaken Bayley's ability to execute her signature Bayley to belly suplex. But, more importantly, it was a psychological attack on the ever-positive Bayley, quite literally trying to break her spirit by breaking her ability to hug. Bayley, for her part, sold the injury beautifully, her facial expressions conveying pain and frustration. but true to her character, she refused to give up. The turning point came when Bayley reversed Sasha's bank statement submission hold, using her injured hand to pull Sasha's hair and break the hold. This moment symbolized Bayley's refusal to let Sasha break her, either physically or mentally. The final sequence of the match is a thing of beauty. Bayley hits a top rope Bayley to belly, a move that puts extra strain on her injured hand but demonstrated her willingness to sacrifice for the win. The crowd erupts as Bayley secures the 3 count, the underdog finally having her moment. But it was the post-match interaction that truly cemented this match as special. The genuine emotion as the 4 horsewomen embrace in the ring blurred the lines between storyline and reality, showing the deep bonds between these competitors. In the end, Bayley emerged victorious, capturing her first NXT Women's Championship and cementing her place as one of NXT's top stars. But the story didn't end here. The respect between the 2 competitors was evident in the emotional aftermath of the match. Banks' reign would end at 192 days. This match is a tentpole match for women's wrestling and would definitely set a high bar for things to come. And thankfully for us, these women don't keep us waiting too long for the rematch. The rivalry continued with the rematch at NXT TakeOver Respect on October 7, 2015. This time, these 2 women made history by competing in the first ever 30-minute Iron Woman match in WWE Women's Wrestling. The stipulation is simple. Whoever scores the most falls in 30 minutes would be the champion. Once again, Banks and Bayley delivered a match for the ages. The first ever 30-minute Iron Woman match in WWE Women's Wrestling history was a test of endurance, skill, and storytelling. The psychology here was different. Both women knew they had to pace themselves for a grueling 30-minute battle. Sasha took the early lead, going up 2-0 and looking confident. But Bayley, true to her never-say-die attitude, fought back. The story of this match was Bayley's resilience versus Sasha's increasing desperation. As the clock ticked down, with the score now tied 2-2, both women pulled out all the stops. The final fall came with just seconds remaining, as Bayley locked in Sasha's own bank statement submission. The image of Sasha frantically looking at the clock, realizing she couldn't hold out, was a powerful piece of storytelling. In the end, Bayley retains her title, winning 3 falls to 2. This match further solidified their status as 2 of the best wrestlers in the WWE. What made these matches so compelling was the layer upon layer of history between these 2. Every move, every taunt, every near fall carried the weight of their shared experiences. In their NXT matches, we saw the struggle between Bayley's optimism and Sasha's ruthless ambition. Their main roster encounters told the story of a friendship strained by competition. And their final feud showed how even the strongest bonds can be shattered by jealousy and betrayal. Through it all, Sasha and Bayley demonstrated an almost telepathic in-ring connection. They knew each other so well that their matches flowed like violent choreography, each woman anticipating and countering the other's moves in a deadly dance. This rivalry gave us some of the most emotionally charged matches in recent memory. It proved that in-ring psychology and storytelling aren't just about moves and holds, but about the human drama that unfolds between the ropes. Sasha Banks and Bayley didn't just have great matches. They told great stories, and in doing so, they elevated their entire sport. As 2015 turned to 2016, both Sasha and Bayley were called up to WWE's main roster. Banks made her official main roster debut as part of Team Bad with Naomi and Tamina, while Bayley remained in NXT a little bit longer, finally debuting on the main roster in August of 2016. Their paths diverged for a while as they established themselves on this bigger stage. Banks quickly became a focal point of the women's division, engaging in a high-profile feuds with Charlotte Flair and winning her first main roster women's championship. If you would like to know more about that specific feud, we actually have covered Sasha versus Charlotte. Going back to this feud, and Bayley, when she arrived, was immediately popular with the main roster audience, her underdog character resonating just as it did in NXT. She too found success, capturing the Raw Women's Championship from Charlotte Flair in early 2017. As both women vied for the top spot in the women's division, their friendship began to show signs of strain. They found themselves on opposite sides of the ring more often, their competitive spirits sometimes getting the better of their personal relationship. One notable moment came at the 2017 Royal Rumble, where Banks eliminated Bayley from the first ever Women's Royal Rumble match. The look they shared after the elimination spoke volumes. Their friendship was strong, but their individual ambitions were stronger.
Hey, this is Ben with Feud Rewind with a quick word from our first unofficial sponsor. Water. You need some. I need some. We all need some. We're made of it. Guess what? It comes in a bunch of different varieties. Hot, cold, frozen. You can get it flavored. You can get it plain. With bubbles, no bubbles, out of your tap, out of a bottle, out of a box. The possibilities are endless. Regardless, you need some. Before we get started, go get a glass. I'm going to get one too. We'll meet back here and start the show. Thank you so much. Water.
Despite the growing tensions, Sasha and Bayley's friendship persevered. In late 2017 and throughout 2018, they often found themselves teaming up against common enemies. This period saw them support each other through victories and defeats, rekindling the bond they had formed in NXT. Their alliance culminated in the formation of a proper tag team, dubbed by fans as the Boss and Hug Connection, a play on the famous Rock and Sock Connection team of The Rock and Mick Foley. This team name perfectly encapsulated their contrasting personalities. Sasha's boss-like attitude and Bayley's affectionate nature. The creation of the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships in 2019 gave their partnership a new focus. At the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view on February 17, 2019, Sasha and Bayley made history by becoming the inaugural WWE Women's Tag Team Champions. They defeated 5 other teams in an Elimination Chamber match, showcasing their teamwork and individual skills. This victory was a crowning achievement for both women. They had come full circle from their days in NXT, from bitter rivals to championship-winning partners. Their reign as tag team champions allowed them to appear across all WWE brands, including a return to NXT, where their rivalry had begun years earlier. However, the stress of being champions and defending their titles across multiple brands began to take its toll. Cracks started to appear in their partnership, with miscommunications in the ring and tensions backstage. They lost the titles at WrestleMania 35 to the Iconics in a Fatal 4-Way match, a loss that would prove to be the beginning of the end for the Boss and Hug Connection. The loss of the tag team titles marked a turning point in the Sasha Bayley story. Both women were clearly frustrated, and their reactions to the loss differed greatly. While Bayley tried to remain positive and focus on regaining the titles, Sasha became increasingly distant and irritable. This period saw Sasha Banks take some time away from the WWE, reportedly unhappy with her creative direction. In her absence, Bayley underwent a dramatic character change. The once huggable underdog turned her back on the fans, adopting a more cynical, arrogant persona. She cut off her iconic side ponytail and destroyed her inflatable tube men, symbolically killing off her own character. When Sasha returned in August 2019, she too had a new edge to her character. She aligned herself with this new villainous Bayley, and together they terrorized the women's division, they regained the Women's Tag Team Championships, and Bayley captured the SmackDown Women's Championship. For a while, it seemed like Sasha and Bayley were stronger than ever. They dominated both Raw and SmackDown, holding all of the women's gold between them. But as is often the case in wrestling, success breeds jealousy, and cracks begin to show in their alliance. The tension between them built slowly but surely throughout 2020. Subtle glances, slight miscommunications, and a growing sense of competitiveness hinted at the inevitable implosion of their partnership. Fans and commentators speculated about which of them would turn on the other first. Our answer would come on September 4th, 2020, in a moment that shocked the WWE Universe. After losing the Women's Tag Team Championships to Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler, Bayley and Sasha faced Ruby Riott and Liv Morgan in a match on SmackDown. They lost this match as well, and the frustration finally boiled over. In a shocking turn of events, it was Bayley who snapped first. After the match, she unleashed a brutal assault on Sasha, targeting her former friend's neck and slamming her into the ring steps. The attack was vicious and prolonged, leaving Sasha injured and the WWE Universe stunned. This betrayal was years in the making, a culmination of the competitive spirit that had both united and divided them since their NXT days. Bayley, it seemed, had finally decided that her individual success was more important than her friendship with Sasha. The following week saw Bayley justify her actions, claiming that Sasha had always been using her and that she was simply beating her former friend to the punch. She boasted about being the longest reigning SmackDown Women's Champion and declared that she didn't need Sasha or anyone else. Sasha Banks would return from her injury with vengeance on her mind. The stage was set for a monumental clash between these two former best friends. Their rivalry would culminate at the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view on October 25th, 2020. Now I think about it, this might just be one of the only Thunderdome era matches that might make this podcast. Anyway, back to the task at hand. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Not only was the SmackDown Women's Championship on the line, but the match would take place inside the unforgiving structure of Hell in a Cell. This was a fitting battleground for a feud that had become deeply personal. Gone was the underlying respect, replaced by genuine animosity. This Hell in a Cell match was all about Sasha's quest for revenge and Bayley's desperate attempt to hold onto her championship and justify her betrayal. The use of weapons in this match wasn't just about inflicting pain. Each chair shot and kendo stick strike was laden with years of pent-up frustration and betrayal. Bayley's use of the ladder, a callback to their NXT days, was particularly poignant. It represented how far she had fallen from the hugger who had once stood atop that ladder celebrating with Sasha. Sasha's victory came through a brilliant piece of poetic justice. She used Bayley's own finishing move, the Rose Plant, to secure the win. This wasn't just about winning the championship. It was Sasha symbolically turning Bayley's betrayal back on her. The match itself was a brutal affair, befitting the intensity of their rivalry. Both women used the cell structure to inflict punishment, showcasing a level of aggression rarely seen in women's wrestling. Chairs, kendo sticks, and even Bayley's beloved ladder all came into play. In the climax, Banks placed Bayley's head in a steel chair and applied the Banks statement on Bayley while stomping on the chair and forcing Bayley to submit to win the title. After which, Banks posed on Bayley with one foot on her chest, holding her newly won championship. In the end, it was Sasha Banks who emerged victorious, capturing the SmackDown Women's title and gaining a measure of revenge against her former friend. The image of Sasha standing on top of her former friend was a powerful conclusion to this chapter of their rivalry. But in wrestling, no story truly ends. While this match marked the climax of their feud and mechanically would bring an end of our rewind for the week, the history between Sasha Banks and Bayley ensures that their path will likely cross again in the future. While we know that Sasha would ultimately leave WWE for New Japan and then AEW, while Bayley is still in WWE, in wrestling, you just never say never. As far as the storyline of our feud, that does wrap up all of our canonical high and low points. What this feud was really about wasn't the matches. This was another feud built upon S-tier level character work. Bayley began her WWE journey as the ultimate underdog, a wide-eyed fan living her dream. Her character was defined by an unwavering optimism and a genuine love for both wrestling and its fans. This wasn't just a gimmick. It was a full-blown extension of Bayley's real-life passion for the business. Psychologically, Bayley represented the inner child in all of us. That part that believes in heroes and happy endings. Her hugs weren't just a cute trademark. They symbolized her open-hearted approach to life and wrestling. This made her extremely relatable to fans, especially younger ones. However, as her career progressed, we saw a fascinating psychological evolution. The constant setbacks and betrayal she faced began to chip away at her sunny disposition. Her transformation into a villain wasn't just a shocking twist. It was a psychological progression for a character who had been pushed to her breaking point. The quote, role model Bayley that emerged was a dark reflection of her former self. She still believed she was setting an example, but now it was just showing that nice girls finish last. This new Bayley was bitter, cynical, and manipulative. A stark contrast to her former persona, yet still recognizably Bayley. This psychological journey made Bayley one of the most complex characters in modern wrestling. She embodied the painful process of losing one's innocence and the bitterness that can result from shattered idealism. For the other half of the story, Sasha Banks, the boss, presented a wholly different psychological profile. From the outset, Sasha's character was defined by supreme confidence bordering on arrogance. She carried herself like a star, even before she became one. However, beneath the boss's brash exterior lay a well of insecurity and a desperate need to prove herself. This duality made Sasha an incredibly compelling character. Her boastfulness wasn't just heel tactics. It was a shield protecting a vulnerable core. Sasha's psychology in the ring as well was fascinating. Her willingness to put her body on the line in high-risk maneuvers spoke to a deep-seated need to prove her worth, not just to the fans or her opponents, but to herself. This often translated into a reckless aggression that made her matches thrilling, yet kind of nerve-wracking to watch. She's near the top of the list of top sellers of all time. Her believability in the ring is second to none. The complexity of Sasha's character came to the fore in her relationships. Her friendships, whether with Bayley or others, were always tinged with competitive edge. She seemed to both crave and resist emotional connections, leading to a push-pull dynamic that added depth to her storylines. When Sasha turned on Bayley, it wasn't just a case of ambition overtaking loyalty. It was the culmination of years of pent-up resentment, insecurity, and a need to establish her own identity separate from her longtime friend and rival. The interplay between these two complex psychologies was what made the Sasha-Bayley rivalry so captivating. Earlier in their careers, they represented two sides of the same coin, the wide-eyed dreamer and the ambitious star in the making. Their initial friendship made sense because they both saw in the other what they aspired to be. As they evolved, their psychological differences became more pronounced. Bayley's optimism began to grate on the increasingly cynical Sasha. Meanwhile, Sasha's brash confidence became a source of both admiration and resentment for Bayley. Their eventual implosion wasn't just a narrative necessity. It was the inevitable result of two fundamentally different worldviews colliding. Bayley's transformation into a villain can be seen as her finally embracing the cynicism that Sasha had long embodied. Sasha, in turn, found herself in the unfamiliar role of wronged hero, forcing herself to confront her own vulnerabilities. However, the phenomenal character work is only elevated by their groundbreaking matches in NXT to their main roster success. All the way to the eventual bitter end of their feud, Banks and Bayley consistently push the boundaries of what's possible in women's wrestling. The rivalry has given us some of the most memorable matches and moments in recent WWE history. The NXT TakeOver Brooklyn match is often cited as one of the greatest women's matches of all time. A bout that proved beyond doubt that women could headline shows and deliver show-stealing performances. NXT TakeOver Respect gave us the 30-minute Broadway that maybe we didn't know we needed, but we definitely are appreciative of. And while the Thunderdome era of the WWE is often hard to rewatch, their Hell in a Cell match is what I would consider one of the few shining beacons in the otherwise ethereal darkness that was the Thunderdome. Throughout all the matches, Banks and Bayley told a nuanced tale of friendship, ambition, betrayal, and redemption that rivaled any male-driven story in its emotional impact and in-ring delivery. Their success, along with that of their fellow horsewomen Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch, helped to usher in a new era of women's wrestling in WWE. This rivalry had also inspired a new generation of female wrestlers. Young competitors, perhaps none more famous than Izzy, are entering that business now, having a blueprint for success and a standard of excellence to aspire to. The bar has been raised, and the future of women's wrestling looks brighter than ever. From their early days in NXT to their bitter feud in the main roster, Sasha Banks and Bayley have given us moments of joy, heartbreak, shock, and awe. They made us believe in the power of friendship and the destructive force of ambition. Through their performances in and out of the ring, Sasha Banks and Bayley didn't just tell a story about wrestling. They told a story about the human condition, about the pain of growing up, and the cost of success. Their rivalry is a testament to the power of long-term storytelling in professional wrestling. It's a reminder that the best feuds are those that evolve over time, that draw from a shared history to create something truly special. In the end, the Sasha Banks-Bayley rivalry was more than just a battle for championships. It was a psychological war between optimism and cynicism, between self-belief and self-doubt. Their story resonated so deeply because it reflected the eternal struggles we all face as we navigate friendship, ambition, and self-identity. And remember, in the world of professional wrestling, the greatest rivalries are born from the strongest friendships, and the most bitter enemies often have the most in common. And with that, this brings us to the end of the rewind for the week. I appreciate you spending some time with me to relive some classic wrestling drama. You know how to do that follow, like, subscribe, and share gimmick. We're on all the socials as Feud Rewind, and that email is feudrewind@gmail.com. Fellow fan, I am your host, Ben Zalance, and I'll see you next week when we roll it back with another feud to rewind.